Hello everyone, I'm Mackenzie, or Mac for short, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a reacting to my subscribers' hamster cages video. So these submissions were all sent in by some lovely people over on Instagram, so make sure to follow my Instagram and my TikTok if you want to potentially be a part of future videos. So let's get right into it. So this enclosure belongs to Willow the Syrian Hamster on Instagram, and this enclosure is for a Syrian hamster. So first of all, I love the size of this enclosure. It's 100 by 101 by 61 centimeters, which is a perfect size for a hamster. The minimum is 100 by 50 centimeters, so this is above that. It has a nice wheel, it's 11 inches, and I like the blue color. I think it's really pretty. We have a good bedding depth in here of 11 to 12 inches. I would recommend the minimum for bedding be like 8 to 10 inches, just depending on the size of your hamster and how much they like burrowing, but never take away all the bedding if they don't like burrowing. There's some beautiful natural clutter with some cork logs and wood items in there. We have a gorgeous variety of sprays, and I love all of the pops of color with some of the ceramic hides and some of the sprays along with the wheel. We have a lot of substrates and textures in this cage, and overall I give it a 10 out of 10. So this next enclosure was submitted by Fluffy Friends on Instagram, and this enclosure houses a female Robrovsky. So this enclosure is a great size. It is the paw hut, which is, I believe, 115 by 60 centimeters. It is the cage that I have, and I just think it's great. It's really cool to see other paw hut setups because I really like the way other people set them up compared to like how I set mine up. So there's an amazing bedding depth in this cage of 13 to 16 inches. There's a suitable wheel. It's 8 inches due to struggles with the previous wheel because robos are so small they can have troubles pushing the wheel, but 8 inches is still perfectly suitable, especially for a robo. I wouldn't use it for a Syrian hamster though because it's just too small. This enclosure has safe bedding that will be great for holding burrows as it's a mix of aspen bedding, paper-based bedding, and orchard grass hay. There's a lot of substrates and textures in this enclosure. There's corn cob, cork logs, sand, cocoa fiber, branches, moss, toilet paper, etc. There's a lot of different sprays in this enclosure, such as millet, oat, broomcorn, celosia, hare's tail grass, and more. There's a large sand bath, which is incredible for a Robrovsky hamster as they naturally come from desert areas. And I just overall really love the natural aesthetic of this enclosure. This enclosure gets a 10 out of 10 from me. Okay, so this next enclosure is from Buns and Blue on Instagram, and this enclosure houses a Syrian hamster. This is, once again, another paw hut setup, which I love to see. So in this enclosure, there are a lot of different substrates and textures, which is great for enrichment. There are 7+ different types of sprays, and I absolutely love the natural pops of color, with the sprays especially. It just looks so pretty. There's 14 inches of bedding in this cage, which is great. And there's a 12-inch wheel, which is also great, especially for a Syrian. And they are even adding more branches and textures to this cage, which is just phenomenal because this is already such an amazingly enriched cage, and the fact that you plan on adding more is just incredible. So overall, this enclosure is a definite 10 out of 10 for me. Now, this next enclosure is for a Chinese dwarf hamster, and this enclosure was sent in by Lisa's Pets on IG. So this enclosure is 80 by 120 centimeters, which is great. There's a suitable wheel. It is 28 centimeters or 11 inches. There's a large sand bath, which is great. I believe this is because the hamster actually loves sand, which is perfect. I love when people cater to their hamster's likes and dislikes and really assess their individual personalities when setting up their enclosures. There's wood shavings for the bedding, which is great for holding burrows. I really love the natural look of this enclosure and all of the logs and branches and just natural enrichment and clutter that you've added. And there's a lot of sprays and forage in this cage, which is also amazing. Overall, I give this enclosure a 10 out of 10. This enclosure is from Buddy the Syrian Hamster, and obviously a Syrian hamster lives in this cage. So this cage is actually the upgrade from a previous cage that was only 360 square inches, and this enclosure is now 600 square inches, which is a great upgrade, and I love seeing people upgrade like that. But unfortunately, there are no bin cages that meet the 775 square inch minimum. It's just not something you can find. So unfortunately, you will have to upgrade sometime, but you said your hamster's happy and showing no signs of stress, so this should be okay for now. Bin cages are good and suitable for temporary enclosures. I love the DIY multi-chamber you've made. I made a similar one until I could get my Night Angel multi-chamber, and it worked great. I loved it, and it was free to make. You have a beautiful cork log in the middle of the enclosure. You have multiple substrates in this cage, which is great for enrichment, and I love the fact that you've added live plants in this cage. I absolutely love live plants in hamster cages and plan on adding some to mine eventually. I would recommend to add more sprays and forage and more bedding since you only have 8 inches, and just overall more clutter in the enclosure. This enclosure gets a 6 out of 10 from me. So this enclosure is from Tara's Pets on Instagram. I feel like I pronounced your name wrong. Is it Tara or Tara? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. This enclosure has a hybrid dwarf in it, and she actually sent in multiple different setups, but I decided to just pick the one. I'm sorry. It's just so I could assess it kind of more in depth. So this enclosure is a good size. It's 100 by 60 centimeters, which is just slightly above the minimum, which is always great. It has a good bedding depth of 35 to 40 centimeters. There's a 27 centimeter wheel just due to struggles pushing it. There's a lot of sprays and forage in this enclosure, and there's a lot of enrichment opportunities and clutter, which I love. This enclosure gets a 10 out of 10 from me. So this enclosure belongs to Joss's Hammy Hut. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. And this enclosure houses a Syrian hamster. This enclosure is a good size. It's 893 square inches. There's 11 inches of bedding, which is always good. A beautiful wheel. I love that. I believe it's a Night Angel wheel. I love how it's clear. I want a clear wheel so bad. There's lots of sprays in this enclosure, which is great. They look very beautiful. There's some flower forage, I think, over in that little, terrarium dish, and I see some scattered around the enclosure. Always good. Love some forage. There is a multi-chamber hide, and there are multiple substrates, which is great for enrichment. One thing I would recommend is to add some orchard grass hay in there. It looks really natural, and it helps with burrow stability, actually, and it's great for nesting material as well if your hamster likes to take things back for their nest. Overall, I give this enclosure a 9.5 out of 10. So this enclosure is from Josie's Zoo, and this is for her Roborovsky hamster. So this is a paw hut, once again, great size. There is a nice wheel in here. It's 10 inches, which is great for a robo. Easy for them to push still, but nice and big so they can control the speed well. There is 10 to 11 inches of bedding throughout this enclosure, which is great for burrowing, especially for a robo. They're really tiny, but that's a great amount of bedding for them. There are 6 different textures in this cage, which is great. 13 different hides, which is perfect for a robo because they are a little bit more skittish than other species because they haven't been domesticated for as long. There are 15 plus different types of sprays, which is incredible. And I just love all the clutter and the natural look of this cage. And I love that mushroom hideout. Here's another enclosure from Josie. This time it's for her Syrian hamster. And it's the exact same enclosure, so once again, great. An 11-inch wheel, which is great for a Syrian because they're a lot bigger than robos. 10 to 11 inches of bedding again, great. 6 different textures, same as the last cage. There's 10 different hides and 13 plus different types of sprays. There's a great multi-chamber hide in here, and there's lots of forage and enrichment in this cage. I give both of these enclosures a 10 out of 10. This enclosure is from Miso the Robo Hamster, and it obviously houses a Roborovsky. This enclosure is an amazing size. It is absolutely massive. It's 236 by 100 centimeters. It's the IKEA packs if you want to make it. There's a lot of sprays and forage in this cage, which is great. There's a nice multi-chamber at the back. There are a lot of substrates and textures throughout the enclosure, and I love all of the DIY items. There's a lot of really nice clutter in here, perfect for a robo. And I noticed the toilet paper roll, the whole toilet paper roll in the enclosure. I think that's, it looks hilarious, but I think that's such a great idea because they can just tear it off for nesting material, and then it's also like a tunnel. I give this enclosure a 10 out of 10. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you to everyone who submitted their enclosures. Just a reminder, these are not meant to bully anyone or hurt anyone's feelings. These are all just gentle and kind suggestions. Thanks again for submitting your enclosures and letting me review and rate them. And to everyone watching this, make sure to go and follow these people on Instagram and whatever other social medias they have. A lot of them have some really incredible enclosures and great care that you can really take some inspiration from. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!